On a daily basis, we use all kinds of tools, our cell phones, pens and pencils, or even hammers for that matter. It is hypothesized that these tools are being incorporated as neural presentations of our body within our brain. These tools, therefore, seems to become a sensory extension of our bodies. There are specific neural mechanisms involved when it comes to our tactile sensory information. For example, when we touch surfaces or when we use our hands to do something, wherever there is a tactile information involved, there are specific neural mechanisms that involve within the brain. Now, if these tools are an extension of our sensory mechanisms, the question is, do the same neural mechanism apply when we just use our hands or when we use these tools with our hands? In other words, can our brain distinguish whether we're using our hands to do something or if we are using a tool to do something or touch something? For the purpose of this study, these researchers set out to examine the brain waves as to whether we are doing something with our hands in comparison to if we use a tool to do the same thing. And the main question here was, does our brain use the same neural mechanisms that it uses when it processes information that has body-related information within it when we use also tools? There are multiple spatial codes when it comes to our tactile sensory information and when we localize those touch sensory information. And at the brainwaves level, a touch on the skin elicits alpha as well as beta brainwaves frequencies. In this case, alpha and beta brainwave frequencies are used in two types of computational codes. Alpha brainwaves frequency appear to encode the external coordinate as to where the touch in space around our body is positioned, whereas the beta band frequencies appear to encode the anatomical coordinates, meaning to say where on the skin the touch was placed. And the question is, does our brain use the same brainwaves frequencies when we use a handheld tool, let's say a pen? One of the major results of this study showed that there was indeed the same, almost identical neural mechanism when it comes to the brain waves that the brain uses to encode and elicit when we use our hands versus when we are holding a tool. It uses the exact neural mechanism. There is no difference as to when we use our hand to do something in comparison to when we use a tool to do something. And so to illustrate, the brain uses alpha brainwaves frequencies to encode the external coordinates of the tool exactly how it did to establish the coordinates of the external of the body, meaning to say that the brain uses similar neurocomputational mechanism to process the touch location of the hand as well as the handheld tool. And it is more specifically the alpha brainwaves frequencies that reflect these neurocomputational processing. In other words, the same brainwaves frequencies are involved when there is a touch on the hand, whereas there is a touch on the tool that is held in the hand. Another very interesting finding of this study was that when there was a touch on the hand, it was the right occipital cortex that was activated the most, whereas it was the inferior temporal cortex that was activated the most when the participant held the tool in their hand, so when it was tool related. To sum up, this study showed that the brain repurposes the same neurocomputational model and processing when it comes whether we are using our hand or whether we are using a tool. In other words, we appear to become one with the tool when we use it. Now, you can translate this to your own daily lives, because the tools that we are using are becoming more and more part of us, and it appears that the brain thinks the same because it uses the same brainwaves frequencies and the same neural processing for when it uses these tools. Another very interesting part of this study was that up until now, these type of topics were studied at the behavioral level and or the physical brain level. This is one of those new studies that we've been covering so far that also incorporates in brainwaves level, brainwaves frequency, aka neural oscillation. And for that reason, these studies become even more exciting because we are getting a more holistic into these neural mechanisms of the brain. So we're not only studying the brain at the physical level, but now we're also incorporating the non-physical level, aka brain waves, aka neural oscillations.